Good morning, CSSC. The fact that y'all are in here right now, despite a really crazy weekend and probably a really crazy evening, kudos, major kudos. So my voice is a little bit gravelly. So either I can talk in a really deep voice and not have my voice crack, or I can talk like this. And okay, so thank you all for being here today. This is how we wrap up the Convergence. Typically, at CSSC Convergences, our keynote speakers only show up for the Saturday. But we're in luck for this Convergence. We have an excellent keynote speaker lined up for today, and then we're going to have breakout caucuses following so that we can really take advantage of what we've learned this weekend to further implement our visions for sustainable future on our campuses here on out. So we'll have some information out for you for the breakout caucuses. It is important to know that we're going to totally wrap everything up around, well, 12:30, but I think that might get pushed back another 10 minutes. We're going to do a spiral hug photo shoot. You know how it is, nice and typical. We hippie out Memorial Glade. We will be all meeting at Dwinell Plaza, so make sure you're out there by the time your breakout caucus wraps up, and we'll do what we do best and hug it out. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ambrosia Krinsky. She's a phenomenal organizer.
Hi, family. Hi, I got a mic. Hi, family. So first things first, I have a spoon. Someone loaned it to Mateus. Does anyone know? Who's that guy right there? You? Okay. So we'll give you your spoon. I have it. It's safe. Okay. All right. So focus. Bring it in. Bring it in. Okay. My name is Ambrosia. As Zen said, I've been a part of this community for 3 years. I met up with us my last semester at Butte Community College, and through this organization, woo! Sustainability buddies. So through this organization, I've had the wonderful opportunity of making beautiful relationships, lobbying in Washington, D.C. through Power Shift, serving as a Summer of Solutions Fellow in East Oakland, and rocking it here with all of you. I love this community, and thank you so much. How many of you are new to this community? Thank you! Oh, the relationships that you make here, they last. It's incredible. Like, thank you so much for being my family. Okay, so I was kind of at a little bit of a loss today. Not even a loss, a little bit of a struggle when I found out I was introducing Hunter, because Hunter has been working so hard for over 30 years with integrity and passion and drive to help transition our economies and our systems to be sustainable, not only for the humans, but also for the non-humans. Yes, okay. Hunter founded the Rocky Mountain Institute in Denver. She also founded the Natural Capitalism Incorporated in 2003. It's a nonprofit that works on natural capitalism solutions to implement ideas of sustainable development on a global scale. Hunter works within the system to change the system. She holds BAs from Pitzer in sociology. See, sociologists can do stuff. And political science, in addition to a law degree from Loyola. Hunter has co-authored 9 books. I have a hard time doing a report. It's great. 2 of the most recent are Climate Capitalism, Capitalism in the Age of Climate Change, and Natural Capitalism, Creating the Next Industrial Revolution. So taking back the Industrial Revolution. She has presented to the U.S. Congress, the World Summit on Sustainable Development, the World Economic Forum, the Global Economic Forum, the United Nations Development Program, and the European Climate Exchange. Yeah, and now she's here with us. Woo! She's been featured on PBS's Nova, 60 Minutes, Good Morning America, and Bill Moyer's Now. She's also the recipient of the alternate Nobel Peace Prize the Right Livelihood Award. Very cool. In addition to other awards, many awards. She teaches sustainable business management at Bainbridge Graduate Institute in Seattle and at the University of Denver. She's also one of the founding professors at the Presidio's Graduate Institute, teaching a sustainable MBA program. Today, Lovins is going to rock us by talking about the texts we already have and what's blocking them from being implemented into the solutions that we desperately need. Yeah, and she says if we can do this, it will improve our quality of life, not just for us, but for everyone. And in brief, natural capitalism can be described as the total sum of all ecological systems that support life. And that's the difference from human-made capital. Human-made capital is not, or natural capitalism is the stuff that we can't make. It's the stuff that the earth produces for us. It's expanding the system of economics to include that which we cannot produce. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce Hunter Lovins.
Thank you all. It is an enormous honor to now be a part of your family. Rock on, we need you. We need you to be the architects of a world that works for 100% of humanity, as Bucky Fuller called for, not the victims. And we can do this, but we do it against rather serious odds. Global Biodiversity Outlook 3, science from Dr. Tom Lovejoy at the Smithsonian. We are losing every major ecosystem on the planet. 3 of them are tipping into collapse. Coral reefs. Sorry, scuba divers. Business as usual. There will be no coral reefs on planet Earth by perhaps as early as 2050. The Amazon, the Earth's lungs. And the oceans are acidifying. Now, this is a bit more serious, a bit more scary than just, okay, you won't get to eat oysters. Those little calciferous critters called phytoplankton that are the base of the food chain are losing the integrity of their shells. Why do we care? They produce about half the oxygen that we breathe. This has happened 3 times before on planet Earth, and 60 to 90% of species went extinct. And here we all are, so as George Carlin says, save the Earth will be fine. It'll shake us off like a bad case of fleas. What we're talking about is save the humans and save life as we know it. Now here's what's driving this threat, is the release by humans of fossil energy, oil, gas, coal. And we now have science going back over 11,000 years in the ice cores, where they trapped little bubbles of whatever the oxygen was, or the atmosphere was then. They can see what the concentration of carbon dioxide is. We're heading for 400 parts per million CO2 concentration in the atmosphere right now. Scientists say the only safe level, and by safe they mean 50-50 chance we won't have catastrophe, that's not my definition of safe, is 350 parts per million. We're over that already, heading for what? For 50 parts per million, 500 parts per million, 600 parts per million, and the temperature is warming. Thermometers are not lying, it is getting hotter. In the last couple of years, 2 entities that you would expect to say party on, the International Energy Agency, which has always said, oh, there's lots of oil, don't worry about it, burn lots of oil. OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, this is the booster club of the rich nations that has always said, grow, grow, grow some more. Both of these came out and said, we have locked in 2-degree C warming. Sorry, all of the coal plants, the infrastructure, the cars on the road, the factories, we're going to get to 2 degrees C. Anybody know how much warming we've had to date? 0.8 degree C. So all the impacts we're seeing, Superstorm Sandy, the acidification of the oceans, the sea level rise, the droughts in the Midwest, the fires here in California, this is all at 0.8 degrees C. Double it, 1.6 degree. We have already locked in 2 degrees C warming. Congratulations, this is your world. What these guys are now saying is if we do not act, and by we I mean the world, we will by 2017 lock in 6 degrees C warming. This is not survivable, not by species as we know them. Again, it's happened before on Earth. Life will go on. It won't be life we recognize. This is our challenge. Yeah, the science is uncertain. That's what science is, we argue. Here's the science on climate change I like. And I'm going to argue it doesn't matter. Now, I say this with all deference to the great climate scientists, many of them from this institution, who are spending their lives trying to get their models to catch up with observed reality, because this stuff's happening faster than the scientists say that it should. But let's assume the skeptics are right. Climate change is a hoax. Don't go to Vegas on the odds of that being true. But in a sense, it doesn't matter, because if all you are is a profit-maximizing capitalist, you'll do exactly what you do if you were scared to death about climate change, because we know how to solve this problem at a profit. We have all the technologies we need to do it. It's what the smart companies are doing. So let's go. If it's a hoax, we'll all make a lot of money. If it's real, we'll all make a lot of money. Either way, we can argue about the science in the bar later on. Let's go. And that is the thesis of my recent book, The Way Out, Kickstarting Capitalism to Save Our Economic Ass. And if any of you get in fights with climate deniers, don't fight on the science. Argue the business case. We now know that companies that are bringing to the market disruptive, innovative technologies to use less carbon are financially outperforming competitors that are not doing this. Companies that report their carbon footprint to the Carbon Disclosure Project and are the leaders in reducing that footprint have twice the average return on their investment as companies that are the laggards. And there is an enormous scope for doing more. My team walked into a company that had 6,300 computers and monitors that they leave on 24/7 because of some urban myths. Shortens the life of the computer to turn it off and on. No. IT needs it left on 24/7. No. One night a week will do fine. In this company, publishing a policy, turn the darn thing off if you're not sitting in front of it, would save them $700,000 in the first year. This is free money. The neoclassical economists amongst us would say this isn't possible. We have, after all, a free market. If this sort of thing existed, it would have been captured. This is a real story. Ford Motor Company did this a couple years back, saved themselves $1 million the first year. You can do it at home. You can do it in your small business. Well, it's beer money. Ohio State did it. Turned computers off at night. Saved themselves $250,000 that's going into their academic programs. The team walked into a big warehouse, 7 million square foot distribution center, floor to ceiling boxes, 500-watt light bulbs shining down on the tops of the boxes. The guys down below had task lighting so they could see where they were going. This is called inventory afraid of the dark. We said, y'all have a switch, $650,000. If you put students in good green schools with daylighting, you get higher test scores. Walmart did an inadvertent controlled experiment. They were going to build a green building. They got halfway through, lost interest. So they had a green half and a not so green half. Surprise, the green side had 40% higher retail sales, and all the associates wanted to work there. Humans like daylight. We are more productive in daylight. So you build good green buildings, you get 6 to 16% higher labor productivity. The built environment uses a lot of our energy, a lot of other resources. And the brand new Bullet building built up in Seattle is what's called a living building. It will produce all of its own electricity, capture all of the water that it needs, treat the water on site. We can build better buildings. We can fix up the buildings that we have. Real estate office down in Florida was going to do a retrofit. So they used some rocket science. They got out a coal plant and saved themselves about $8,000 a year. Right down here in San Leandro, a landlord named Bob Moylan worked with PG&E to do a lighting upgrade to the building. Cut the electricity use by almost a third. He can pass some of these savings on to his tenants. He now has a more rentable building. Richard Branson, the gazillionaire entrepreneur, founded a group called the Carbon War Room. They are now working up in Sacramento with SMUD, the utility up there, to do massive retrofits of commercial buildings. They reckon that the $650 million program they're putting in SACTO and in Miami-Dade will create over 40,000 new jobs, $1 billion in tax benefits, $10 billion in increased economic activity. Just down south of Oakland, a little company called Mi Rancho Tortillas. They make tortillas. Their COO, Joe Santana, had no earthly interest in sustainability, but he wanted to sell to Walmart. Walmart, as you may have heard, is going green. He said, what do I have to do? We helped him do a lighting retrofit, get more efficient ovens, eliminate waste packaging. He's going to save $450,000 over the next couple of years. You better believe he's now a big fan of sustainability. Per megawatt saved in a community, you generate over $2 million in increased economic activity, over $500,000 in increased wages, and 10 times the number of jobs that you would get if you invested the same amount of money in building a new coal plant. Do you guys want jobs? We know how to get jobs. Implement sustainability. Once you've done the efficiency, you can move on to renewable energy. Field College gets all of its energy and then some from the sun, and they're selling the excess electricity, making money for the student programs. Pretty cool. Every college should do this. I mentioned jobs. Renewables are winning. The new energy now being brought on is almost all renewable energy. And look at the jobs. The traditional economy jobs are going down. The green jobs, clean tech sector is going up. Here in California, it grew 3 times as fast as the traditional economy. And a quarter of these jobs are in manufacturing. Do we want to bring manufacturing back to the U.S.? Stop investing in last century's technologies and invest in the future. How do you do it? None of us are in Congress. We're working here in our own communities. No worries. Up in Sonoma, the county put together a little fund of money. Any citizen, small business person can go to the county, get the money to implement energy efficiency, put renewable energy up, and pay it back out of a slight increase to the property tax of that property. This is not a loan to your credit card. It's not a bank loan to you so that when you move, you still have to pay it off. This attaches to the property. It's called PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy. In the first 9 months of the program, in the teeth of the 2008 recession, construction jobs in Sonoma went up 8.4%. In neighboring Napa that did not have the program, jobs went down 3%, as they did for the Bay Area as a whole. We can create these programs community by community. Oh, and then those paragons of financial rectitude, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, both of them bankrupt, said, we will redline any jurisdiction that implements PACE financing. And the program more or less died across the country. Communities all across the country were set to go on this. And it died. Except for Sonoma that said, heck with you, we're doing it anyway. And we're starting to see communities coming back and saying, wait a minute, this is about our economic development. This is about our jobs. Get out of our way. Well, okay, if we can't have PACE, what else? Why is it that California gets 70% more sun than cold, cloudy Germany, but Germany, last couple of years, has been installing 28 times the amount of solar as we have here in California? No, Rush Limbaugh, it's not because the sun shines more in Germany. It's because Germany has good national policy called a feed-in tariff. What this means is the German government passed a law that said the utilities will pay a fair price to anybody who generates green electrons. Germany plans to be 100% renewably powered by 2050. They're closing in on being halfway there. This created over 400,000 new jobs, almost 500,000 new jobs, and cut the cost of solar to the point that within this year or next, solar will be competitive with coal-generated electricity in Germany, as it will be in a couple of California states. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But wait a minute, you say. If you pay more for green electrons, it's going to raise my rates. Yep. Deutsche Bank did a study, €2 to €3 a month, $50 a year on average, a total of 8.6 billion euro more. Ooh, sounds like a lot. What Deutsche Bank found was, had the Germans done nothing, just burned coal, they would have had to pay 9.4 billion euro more. Sorry, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay less more if you have good policy. I know, that's hard to wrap your head around on a Sunday morning. And there's a man here in California named Craig Lewis, runs a group called the Clean Coalition that is trying to get these feed-in tariffs implemented here in cities in California and indeed in the state of California. So if you're looking for a project to support, check out the Clean Coalition. They got one in Palo Alto. Gainesville, Florida, the state of Vermont, Ontario, Canada, Fort Collins, Colorado. These things are not radical, crazy new policy. They're popping up everywhere. How about in your community? And here's what's happened in Germany. We now have towns that are 100% renewably powered. Wilpolsried, like Butte College, makes more energy than they need. They sell the excess, gaining $5 million, almost $6 million a year for their town. But I really like the Scots. Scotland will be 100% renewably powered by 2020. Scotland is investing in wind, in wave, in hydro, and in biofuels from their most famous product. We can do it here in Southern California. Before the '08 collapse, we were building a megawatt a week of solar. Southern California Edison built a 250 megawatt power plant on roofs spread around the county at a price point, $875 million, that is eerily close to the $800 million it would have cost to build a coal plant of the same size was canceled up in Montana. The price of coal is going up 10% a year. Don't let anybody tell you coal's cheaper than solar. Increasingly, it is not. Walmart pledged to be 100% renewably powered. IKEA has pledged to be 100% renewably powered by 2020. And increasingly, we're seeing solar trees. You drive your car, park it under the shade, plug it in if it's an electric car, and away you go. And then wind. Wind is coming on very fast, not only in this country. Check out China. China is neck and neck with the US as being the country installing the most wind power. Or Beaver, Utah. Here's a little rural area. Their economic developer said, we don't have anything we can dig up and burn or dig up and sell. We don't have minerals. We don't have coal. What do we have? Somebody said, wind blows here all the time. Bingo. They're building wind farms. And the revenues from that enabled them to reopen the school that had been condemned and is bringing tax revenues and creating jobs, 250 new jobs in rural Utah. And the tax base went up because these are good paying jobs. We know from a group here in California called Next 10 that fully implementing AB 32, the cap on carbon, and the California market that has just this year gone into effect, go California, will add $76 billion to your economy, create over 400,000 new jobs. Notice I haven't mentioned polar bears. This isn't about your grandfather's environmentalism. This is about, are you going to have a job? This is about, are we going to build prosperity in America and around the world? And we know how to do it. Maimonides said, each of us must see ourselves as though the entire world were held in balance, and anything that we do can tip the scale. What you decide to do with your life is going to make the difference. It's going to make the difference whether or not the future is bleak or the future is the best ever. And we know how to make it the best ever. Check out a book by Peter Diamandis, founder of Singularity University down on the peninsula. And again, he walks through a lot of the technologies that we already have that'll solve all these problems. No, there is no silver bullet, but we sure have a lot of silver buckshot. And check it out, whether it's articles in Harvard Business Review or sustainability certifications or Walmart going green. Walmart, if you had told me that the entity on the planet doing the most to drive sustainability would be the evil empire, I'd have bet to eat my hat. But we now have Harvard saying that sustainability isn't the burden on the bottom line, it's the touchstone of all of innovation, and in the future, only companies that make it a goal will achieve competitive advantage. There are now 45 separate studies, and you can download this study of studies from my website that I'll put up at the end for free, called Sustainability Pays. Studies by the likes of those wild-eyed environmentalists at Goldman Sachs, saying that the companies that are the leaders in environment, social, and good governance policy have 25% higher stock value. When Goldman says there's a business case, there's a business case. There's more than that, though. My friend, the business leader, Ray Anderson, said, what's the business case for ending life on Earth? He committed his company, Interface Carpet, to what he called Mission Zero. Zero impact, zero footprint by 2020. They're half the way there. Greenhouse gas emissions down 82%, fossil fuel use down 60%, water use down 75%. Sales up 2/3, profits doubled. Ray was one of the first to show that there is a business case when you do the right thing. Ray tragically died almost 2 years ago. And I was asked, who's the next Ray Anderson? And I said, Paul Pullman. He's the CEO of a little startup called Unilever. Yeah, Fortune 100. 2 years ago, Paul said an amazing thing. You know, Ray owned half the company. Paul is a hired CEO. And he said, I'm not going to report quarterly to Wall Street. The analyst said, what? His stock dropped 10%. He said, look, managing my company quarter by quarter is destroying my ability to create real value in this company. Managing the earth quarter to quarter is what's leading to the state we're in now, where we're losing every major ecosystem. And Ray said, Paul said, Wall Street's a casino, and I'm not going to manage that way. He said to the people who sold, I respect you as human beings, but if you believe that my managing your holdings only for the short term, firing people before the quarterly report comes so that my numbers look better. He said, this is not good business. I'm going to manage for the creation of core business value. And he announced the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, cut their environmental impact in half by 2020, source every feedstock that comes from something grown from sustainable agriculture, and lift 1 billion people out of poverty. Go, Paul! And since then, his profits have doubled, his stock is up 17%. Why? Because you guys want this. You realize that the future is going to be greener. It's not going to be a future. You want to work for a company that's responsible. What Paul Pullman is doing is, again, just better business. But here's the challenge. I like the Sidney Harris cartoon. The two boys scribbling equations on the blackboard. In the middle it says, then a miracle occurs. And one says to the other, I think we need to be a little more explicit here in step 2. What's it going to take? In 2009, the world's leaders gathered in Copenhagen. This poster was in the Copenhagen airport. We knew then what the science was. We know now what the science is. If we do not act, what are you going to tell your grandchildren? Oh yeah, we knew. We didn't act. Bill McKibben, Humboldt College professor from Middlebury, has laid out the math, and it's daunting. The Earth can withstand the emission of 565 more gigatons of carbon, release of CO2, before we hit 2 degrees C warming, which is what the scientists say is the tipping point. Anything more than that's catastrophe. The fossil fuel companies own 2,795 gigatons of carbon that they know where it is, it's in the ground, and their business model is to dig it up and burn it. And if they do, we roast. Unless we stop them. And thank you to the Cal students, the Cal student body that voted to divest of student funds in ownership of fossil fuel companies. Now come on, regents, step up and do the same thing. And churches and cities. There are now 10 cities that have voted to divest of ownership in fossil companies. If any of you have a mutual fund, ask whoever's managing it, do I hold any fossil fuel companies? If I do, sell them. What good would that do? Somebody else will just buy them. Maybe. Most of you are a little young to remember when South Africa had legal segregation called apartheid. Nasty system. They put Nelson Mandela in jail, in theory forever. And American college students started to call on their university chancellors, trustees, regents, to divest of ownership in South Africa. And when Mandela was released from jail and when apartheid fell and the African National Party took over governing South Africa, Mandela's first trip out of the country was to an American college to say to the college students, thank you. What you do does matter. And the future is not predictable. Margaret Thatcher, who was just buried with honors. Anyone who thinks the ANC is going to run South Africa, living in cloud cuckoo land, well, they're running it today. We face a world of surprises. A volcano in Iceland shut down global aviation. A rig blew up in the Gulf. Greece's economy, this wreck is still going on. Now it's Cyprus. Who knew? The Russian mob put all their money in Cyprus. We've created artificial life. China's now the world's second largest economy, on the way to the first. The flash crash. Did you guys see last week? Somebody tweeted in the name of Associated Press that the White House had been attacked, Obama was injured. The Dow dropped instantly. I wonder who was behind that one. Arab Spring. Who predicted Arab Spring? It was a food riot in Tunisia that kicked that off, and it's still going on. Or the Occupy movement. Pakistan has test-fired nuclear-tipped missiles, and then it went underwater. 20 million people displaced because of floods. The earthquake in Japan and the tsunami and the resulting meltdown of a nuclear plant. What's next? I don't know. We stand on a knife edge globally, economically. There was a great piece last week in the Financial Times in which it said, the bankers really have no idea what's going on. Experts have no clue how to govern the economy in the world today. I clipped that out and printed it for my students. Like, yeah, see, they don't know either. Guess what? That means we get to make it up. Bucky Fuller said the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And yeah, we need leadership. We're all looking for the great white leader. And I like this quote from Gandalf. He said, the rule of no realm is mine, but all worthy things that are in peril as the world now stands, those are my care. And for my part, I shall not wholly fail if anything passes through this night that can still grow fair and bear fruit and flower again in the days to come. For I too am a steward, did you not know? But remember, it was these two, the fun-loving, unassuming little hobbits who liked to party on Saturday nights. And they were scared, and they didn't know where they were going. But in the end, all the kings and warriors and wizards could just stand by as the little people saved the world. I think real leadership is extraordinary courage by ordinary people. Thank you for being here today. And I guess we have time for some questions if I said anything controversial.
Hello, hello, hello. All right.
Okay, excellent. Let's spend time for again.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, and we're starting to see this more and more. Companies that say, we want our impact on the planet to be a positive one. Obviously, the first step is to understand what your impact is. So check out Patagonia. Read the piece on Yvonne Chenard. I believe it was written by Hannah Miller in greenbiz.com. Yvonne gave a speech a couple months ago over in San Francisco, in which he said, no, we're not a sustainable company. There is no such thing yet. But we're trying to get there. Our commitment is to do business in a way that does not harm the environment. And so we are telling you a thing called the Footprint Chronicles, what our impacts are, where our products come from. And you can go into that website and trace wherever your Patagonia bit came from. They took out a full-page ad in the New York Times saying, don't buy this jacket. Use the one you have. And if it needs to be repaired, send it back to us and we'll repair it. Or send it back to us and we'll recycle it. Patagonia has been growing at 20 to 30% a year. This company is doing brilliantly well, despite a commitment to do the very best they can for the environment. And now we're seeing an increasing number of very large companies doing this. Unilever may be the largest, and it's one of the reasons I just joined their Sustainability Advisory Board. I'll be meeting with Paul Pullman in a couple of weeks. And one of the things that I'm going to urge him is, good on you, and it's not enough. Now, I just heard Meg Whitman over at HP has tried to do the same thing of not reporting quarterly. So everybody step up and thank Meg, because she's now at terrific risk. When you're a hired CEO, what's your average tenure? 3 years, 4 years? You've clawed your way to the top of the food chain, and you've got 3 years to get what's yours, and then you're out. So why take a risk? She's taking a terrific risk. Pullman's taking a risk. We need to, when we identify a company that takes even the slightest step in the right direction, we need to say thank you. And here's where we want you to go next. And it's this conversation now between customers and companies. If you want something, tell them. When you order breakfast, ask, is this a cage-free egg? Everywhere you go, is this a cage-free egg? Your waitress is going to go, what? Trust me, she's going to go ask. And the chef, when he hears about the 10th, is this a cage-free egg, is going to say, okay, where do I get cage-free eggs? That's how change begins to happen. But yes, we are seeing more and more and more companies doing this. In that book, The Way Out, I list a whole bunch of them. If you read Green Biz, Joel McCower's pub from down in Oakland, you'll hear company after company after company. And increasingly, they're surprising ones. L'Oreal asked me to come speak to them. Whoa, why do you want me? I don't use your product. And so I said I was sitting with the CEO over supper, and he said, you know, it's odd, in a down economy, I can't hire good talent. Before I went, I Googled L'Oreal sustainability. Nothing. L'Oreal green. Nothing. L'Oreal good. Nothing. L'Oreal bad. Nothing. This company's silent. The next morning, I listened to presentation after presentation. A factory up in Canada that did a deep energy retrofit and then put renewables on, so they're now 100% solar. A factory in Belgium that went 100% biofuel. So when I got up, I said, why aren't you telling your story? You have an authentic sustainability story. You ought to be telling it. Well, they are now. And the company is now starting to announce progressively more ambitious sustainability goals. So this is something you can do every day. Vote with your dollars. Buy from companies that are doing the things that you like, and then talk to the companies that are not. And ask them, I'd really like to shop here, but I need cage-free eggs, please. I need cosmetics that don't have toxins in them. I need a car that gets 100 miles a gallon. Go into a dealership and ask for that. They will think you're daft. But again, when enough people ask, it goes up the food chain and gets to the people who make the design decisions. Make sense?
Okay, I'm gonna go over here and then I'm gonna go back to the side one. Can you please raise your hand if you were on stack over here?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for talking today. I saw a lot of the numbers that showed that solar is saving a lot of money, but I wondered if you could comment on the solar subsidies that are paid for by taxpayers.
Sure. But first, I'll comment on the fossil subsidies that are also paid for by tax dollars that the IEA reckons are now $550 billion per year worldwide, just to the fossil industry. In this country, the estimate is we pay about 10 times as much subsidy to the oil, gas, coal, uranium, nuclear companies as we do to all forms of efficiency and renewables. And think about it, no technology has taken off without some government help. Oh, Silicon Valley. You're right, computers were built for the space race. It was the investment in all of the technologies to put a clown on the moon that gave us iPads and all of Silicon Valley. The internet, it was the DARPA net, it was the defense network. You go through technology after technology, they all got their start with federal support. Now, I'm a free marketeer, oddly enough, and I would prefer that we subsidize nothing. And I will give up all forms of subsidy to efficiency and renewables if you will give up all forms of subsidy to the incumbent industries. And when we tried to do that last year, get rid of just the subsidies to the oil industry as a way of cutting the federal budget, can't do that, no. Every congressman has at least 27 lobbyists. 27 lobbyists for one congressman. Who's paying them? Go check it out. Who's doing most of the lobbying? Everybody lobbies, but who are the big chunks of lobbying? And you will find disproportionately it is the Koch brothers, it is the oil companies, it is the coal companies, it is the incumbents in the system. Who elects Congress? Wonder why Congress can't get anything done? Check out who pays what to Congress people. And again, it is disproportionately the incumbent industries that are enabling Congress people to get elected, because without a lot of money, you don't get elected to Congress. You and I and nobody in this room can run for Congress. We're too poor. What kind of a democracy do we have, eh? So let's get money out of politics.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming to speak. There are companies such as Walmart that market themselves as green and sustainable. If they sell products made from sweatshop labor and they give their employees minimum benefits, forcing many employees to rely on the U.S. government for assistance, both unsustainable practices. If sustainability, as you say, is about saving people, how do you reconcile the fact that corporate business practices systemically harm people, but can claim to be green by simply changing their energy sourcing?
Very good question. Very good question. Walmart's not sustainable. Not even close. What they are doing, though, is more to drive implementation of sustainability throughout their supply chain than any other entity. I give them credit for that. I do not give them credit for failing to manage their supply chain on behalf of people. When Walmart comes into a community, and this is much more so in the last decade than in this decade, but there are still some very nasty practices. They basically buy the elected officials. They control the discussion in the community about whether or not we want to have a Walmart. And I believe it was Yerba Buena, California, that said, no, you can't come in here. And they forced Walmart to agree to go 100% renewable on its stores in California before they would allow them to open up in Yerba Buena. I believe San Francisco still does not have a Walmart. Germany has no Walmarts. Why? Germans didn't shop there. Nobody passed a law. The Germans simply said, because of your social policies, we won't shop there. So the way to get at Walmart is simply not to shop there. Now, I have worked for Walmart. I've had them as a client. I've also fired them as a client. One of the things that I do is I try to work with the baddest of the bad guys to try to get them moving in the direction of being a little bit better. But at the point at which I think they're fooling me, then I walk away. At the moment, I'm not working with Walmart. I do know, however, on, for example, the Bangladesh factory that collapsed, the Bangladesh factory before that had the fire. It's tough for an American company. And I know this because I work extensively with the folks who were at HP doing their supply chain, the folks at Timberland, the folks at Patagonia. These companies in these countries are suppliers to suppliers to suppliers to Walmart or Timberland or an American company. Nike had a huge problem with this. So if you say to the person from whom you buy, your supply chain has to be clean, the person goes, yeah, no worries. How do you know that the person from whom they buy and the person from whom that person buys and 4 levels down in the supply chain is green? In each instance of late, these factories that have had these horrific events were suppliers to suppliers to suppliers to Walmart or these other companies. So my friend Betsy Taylor, who runs, Betsy Blaisdell, who runs sustainability for Timberland, personally flies to Cambodia, to Vietnam, to China, to Thailand, and walks into these factories on a surprise visit to catch what's going on. Because these companies keep 2 sets of books. So it's not just, okay, Walmart, you got to make the company from whom you buy be good. They have to make the company from whom that company buys and from whom that company buys and drive it deep into the supply chain, and that takes a little bit of time. That said, these fires have been going on for decades. They go on around the world. And were it not for our ability to push a company like a Walmart to clean up that supply chain, we'd never get them cleaned up. So it's really a question, it's a tactical question of what's the best way to clean up what's going on in Bangladesh. I don't know a better way. If you do, I'd love to hear it. And that's a serious point that I made. I've just been asked by the King of Bhutan and the Prime Minister of Bhutan to be part of an international expert working group to reinvent the economy. Thank you, I think. The ecological economist Josh Farley and I are the editors on a chapter in what's going to be a book of how do we build a sustainable society. We're doing the economy, working with the ecological economist Bob Costanzo, with Francis Moore-Lepay, with David Suzuki, with a team of about 100 from around the world. And when I was here being a Regents lecturer a couple of weeks ago, the campus magazine had a picture of Robert Reich on the cover. And I was walking along, I said, I'd love to talk to him. He actually knows something about the economy. And the gal said, okay, directly I'm sitting in talking to Bob Reich. And so I said, I need help. How would you build a truly sustainable economy? So seriously, here's the website. Write me. If you think you know how to do it, I want to hear from you. And I'll hang around for a few minutes afterwards. I really would like to hear from you. I'm going to try and crowdsource building a new economy. Yes, ma'am. Very good question. Right? Actually, that does matter. Don't hit click on somebody else's petition. Well, do that too. But that doesn't substitute for taking out an old analog piece of paper and an old analog pen and writing and folding it up and putting it in an envelope and addressing it to Tim Cook at Apple. These days, when somebody takes the time to actually write a letter, you can also type it and print it and mail it. And you can even email it. I know that's last century's technology too. A student was saying to me the other day, oh yeah, I was resorting to formal communication. I sent an email. Oh. I thought formal was sending a letter. But that's only the beginning. Every time you purchase anything from Apple, tell the person in the store. The people who work in the Apple stores care about this too. And ask them, please, to tell their supervisor that it really matters to you. You're a loyal Apple customer, you want to be an Apple customer, and it really bothers you that Apple's supply chain is dirty. Tweet it. Put it on Facebook. Organize talk groups. Talk about it at lunch. But most important is, where is your money? If you have any investments, tell your financial manager to, well, this is not a good time to sell Apple stock, but it would have been at the point at which it was at its height, and say, I'm selling this because I don't think it's socially responsible. Do you know what your money is doing at night? But the most important thing all of us can do is to shop with our dollars. And then communicate. You guys are way too young to remember this. In the Vietnam War, the poet Gary Snyder was sitting in a bar in Tokyo, and an American walked in. And they fell to talking, both being Americans a long way from home. Gary asked the American what he was doing. The American said, I work for the U.S. government. I'm on my way to do a study of the Vietnam War. Asked Gary what he thought of it. Gary said, I think it's a bad idea. The American was amazed. He hadn't heard that point of view before working for the government. He was so amazed he stayed, sat up all night talking to Gary. If you ever get a chance to meet Gary, he stayed for 3 days talking to Gary. And then he went on. Gary didn't think much more about it. Moved back to California, lived up in the Sierras, lived in another place. And then he got word through the grapevine. Somebody was looking for him. And word came forward, I'm the guy you met in that bar in Tokyo. That conversation changed my life. Watch your newspapers. 2 weeks later, the Pentagon Papers story broke. The guy was Dan Ellsberg, who, for those of you who don't know your history, took government secrets and gave them to the New York Times. It was the first time that the American people knew they were being lied to. Which is to say, when you have that conversation in the grocery store and you're looking at the peaches, and the person next to you is looking at a big fat peach that's been grown with GMOs or whatever, and you say, you know, I don't eat that stuff. I'm going to eat stuff that's locally grown, where I know who the farmer is. That conversation can change somebody's life. So the most important thing every one of you can do is to speak your values. Kindly, respectfully, but speak them. Thank you all so much for being here. You are the future. Make it a good one.